Welcome everybody to another episode of Ready, Set, Pop. My name is Mariel Pastori, greeting you from the very hot Mexico City, and I would like to introduce you to my co-hosts, Lucas Apache from Brazil and Mauricio Sierra from Colombia. Hey guys.
Hey
Hey
guys,
Mariel, hey Luquitas, how are you
how
guys?
are you? I'm
We
great.
are
I'm
so
very
excited.
excited. Yes,
Yes. Today's episode, it's a really fun one. This topic was selected by Mauricio, and it's all about the Latin explosion because we three are Latinos, so we are very proud of all those Latin singers out there that have made it into, not only the US, but globally. They're like huge superstars. So
yes.
I just want to ask you, Mao, why did you choose this topic?
Wow, Mariel, because it's an amazing subject because I also feel curious about that. Like, guys, that in that time of the music industry, like it was so important to have a hit in the Billboard 100 top Hot 100. I'm sorry.
Yes.
So for the Latinos, what not so easy to chart in this one know if you sing in Spanish, for example. And at that time, it was so important to make this crossover to have the opportunity to sing in English. For that reason, I select this subject because it's very passion. I feel passionate about it because one of the Colombians had the opportunity to have the most successful crossover that is Shakira. So yeah, that's the reason.
No, that's great, Mal. Yes, I think this is a very great subject. We have a lot to talk about. First, I just will tell you a little bit about what we're going to talk about tonight. And our friend Lucas is going to tell us all about those popular Latino singers out there that have made it big, and the ones from his country, Brazil, and that have decided to go into the English language. And then I will talk about some of the Mexican singers that have also sung in English. And finally, our friend now is going to talk about the Colombian explosion with Shakira and whatnot. And so at the end, we will have like always our fun games where we will be asked very interesting questions by Mao that we don't know yet. So this is a surprise.
Yes.
Um,
This is a
so
surprise this time.
Yes. Stay with us because this episode is going to be caliente. Yes,
Caliente.
because we
Ah,
are
yeah, yeah,
Latinos. Yes.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Kenchi,
So,
Kenchi.
look,
Is Kenchi in
Kenchi.
Portuguese, right? Ah, yeah.
Kenchi.
Kenchi in
Yeah, you're right.
Portuguese. Yes.
Yes.
It's going to be really hot. So, okay. Now, Lucas, it's your turn. Tell us all about the Latin explosion out there.
Okay. Well, first of all, I gotta say that Brazil were always kind a part of this Latin culture and music, with is such a shame. Of course, the biggest ones were always here. So even before this Latin explosion, Brazil had Enrique Iglesias, Ricky Martin, Shakira, and Thalia like every single week here in Brazil on the TV shows. So when the Latin explosion happened for me was almost like seeing a Brazilian artist making it, because we were familiar with them. Uh, it was like when you see a friend or someone from your family on TV and it's kind of weird. That was the feeling for me to see Enrique Martin on VMA and stuff like that. But let's let's start with the begin of this. We are calling Latin Explosion something that happened in 1999 because, as you guys know, nowadays after Despacito with Luis Fonsi, we have a Latin explosion worldwide, which is something different. So we are talking about the 90s, and in the America, in the US, the Billboard charts, as Mauricio said, was never easy for a Latin artist to make it back then. So we had like Gloria Stefan and Julio Iglesias uh, doing great in US, but always like uh, in American style, singing English, like being a little bit Latin lover with him, and a little bit sassy and sexy with Gloria Stefan, but very American. And a few years later, we almost have like a Latin fever because of Macarena, which was worldwide in 1996. Yes, everyone knows this one. But the
Yeah.
Latin explosion actually started to happen with Ricky Martin because he was doing great in the Latin charts in the US. Like Maria was a hit in a lot of parts of the world because of the rhythm. It was very dance track. Here in Brazil, it was
Mhm.
like a fever. And then in 1998, he sang the La Copa de la Vida, the song of the World Cup in 1998, the France World Cup. And it make Rick be on the charts in a lot of different countries that he wasn't before because there was an English version and the world was like paying attention in this World Cup soccer games. And Ricky Martin had the opportunity to present himself in the Grammys in 1999 with this song of the World Cup. And America was like crazy about him because he was, of course, very beautiful, handsome man. And he was like shaking and dancing and things that different from the boy bands were doing, more caliente, as we said. And
Yes.
America pay attention. They were crazy about Ricky. And when he performed the song, he was already working in his first English album. So like 2 months later, he released "Living La Vida Loca," which is the first song in this Latin explosion. Because uh, a few months later, in May, he spent like 5 weeks in the first place of the Billboard Hot 100, and it's insane what happens next because he lost the first position to Jennifer Lopez, to the first single "If You Had My Love," which was
Yes.
another Latin artist happened. We talked about Jennifer Lopez in the Pop Princess episode because she was like an artist to be competing with the Pop Princess, the R&B girls, and also in
The
the
Latin
Latin
girls.
market. So
Yeah.
"If You Had My Love" happened in 1999 too. And we had 2 weeks in 1999 without Latin artists on top, which was Destiny Child and Will Smith. And suddenly Christina Aguilera explodes with Ginny Navarro. I'm I'm talking about Christina Aguilera here because I don't know if you guys know, but the label didn't want to Christina use the name Aguilera. They thought that it
Yes.
was hard for American to understand the name and stuff. But BMG, the record label, started to pay attention in this movement with the Latin music, and they decided to use Christina as the artist in this market too. So Aguilera was in, and she started to record Spanish tracks. So I can talk about Christina being part of this 1999 explosion. 5 weeks, number one with Ginny Navarro. Uh, she lost the number one to Ricky Iglesias with Bailamos, which spent 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Another Latin artist uh,
Yeah.
in the number one. And at the same time, he wasn't on number one, but was on the charts. It was Mark Anthony uh,
Mm.
happening. And all those four artists, uh, not Christina, but Jennifer and Ricky and Mark Anthony was part of Sony Music, which was Jennifer Lopez too, which was the record label of Julio Iglesias and Gloria Estefan. So Tony Motola kind of knew what he was doing. He was trying to make this happen. It was not coincidence, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So at
Mm-hmm.
the same time, Santana, which was a huge
Yay.
artist, Yeah,
Mexican icon, right? Yeah.
yeah, he's an icon.
Mexican, yes.
He started to make in this mainstream charts with Smooth, which is one of the biggest songs ever. It spent 12 weeks on the number one uh, spot in the Billboard. So
Great song.
almost, yes, almost all the year, the 1999, the number one spot was a Latin artist. And that never happened before. Never. So this had a huge impact in music in general because for the very first time, Latin artists recording music in English were number one, and the artists that were born in US were recording Spanish tracks. That
Hmm.
always happened if you took the time, but not as in 2000 because everyone wanted to do that. And one example that I have here for you guys is this compilation Divas in Espanol, which a
Yes.
very famous compilation. This is the Brazilian release, but I believe it was released kind of worldwide because I know there's a American version. I don't know if
Yeah.
in your countries.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think
yeah. There
yes.
are,
Uh,
I don't know. I remember that I saw that record here in Colombia. I don't know if it was Mexican or something because it's true, Mariel, that this there is a version, a Mexican version of that album.
Yeah, and is different the track list in a few countries, but here in Brazil we have like Lara Fabian, Celine Dion, Madonna, Mariah Carey, Gloria Stefan, Jennifer Lopez, Laura Pausini, Alexia, Jennifer Rush, and Jessica Simpson singing in Spanish. I love the Jessica Simpson
mhm.
version. Actually, I think
Yeah.
they were planning some Spanish record for Jessica because in this album we have the Spanish version of "I Think I'm in Love with You," and she sang "I Wanna Love You Forever" in Spanish a few times on televisions. I don't
Yeah.
know if they canceled the album. I don't know, but most of the artists were doing that. Like 98 Degrees released Give Me Just One Night, Una Noche. There's a
Mhm.
whole Spanish version. And Christina Aguilera finally released the Mi Reflejo album that I have here,
Love
which
it.
is a
Yes.
huge part of this movement because she won Grammy and the songs, there were versions of the English songs were huge, huge in the Spanish language uh, countries, but she also had like new tracks in Spanish, like becoming hits, like Pero Me Acuerdo de Ti, Falsas Esperanzas. Even here in Brazil, they were well played on the radio, especially Pero Me Acuerdo de Ti. And Brazil was not very received with Spanish songs. Like we loved the artist, but the radio was never playing Spanish songs. Like if you have an English version, it will be on the radio, but the Spanish tracks, no. Like
No.
Thalia was always on MTV, always on TV, but you never heard her on radio. Like Arasando was never playing on radio, but It's My
Oh,
Party,
really?
the English version, suddenly was on the radio. So it kind of changed it with time, but back then was like this. But Pero Me Acuerdo de Ti, no, huge hit
No, never. Okay.
here in Brazil.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
Okay.
that's very interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Sorry, Mal?
That's very interesting. I didn't know that because I know Thalia was so popular in
Yeah.
Brazil, but I always thought that it was because of her Spanish songs. I didn't know it was because of her English songs.
Yeah. For the fans, the Spanish songs were always part of Brazil because of MTV. The music videos were there, and
Oh,
because of the TV shows that she used to come to Brazil to promote the songs. But I'm talking about the radio. So on the radio, no, only the English tracks you could listen all the time. So let me check what I write to tell you more about this. Wait a minute. Um, okay, so suddenly we have Shakira that Mal will talk about later, And we can kind of say that she was the last to do big because we had like Paulina Rubio later that Marielle would talk about. We had Thalia too, but I found an article by LA Times online from 2004, and they were talking about how quickly this movement happened uh, in the US. Like it was kind of explosion, and in the same way that happens fast, goes by really fast. And Tony Motola says that the Latin explosion back then never really happened. It was like a mirage,
Yeah.
because
Mm-hmm.
it was never about the culture. The culture was never about the language. Was never about Latinos. It was about um, sexualizing Latin artists and making them sing in English,
In English. Yeah.
like putting that American image on them and taking advantage of the body and the caliente thing, you know? So it was
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
pure money and commerce. Of course, we have iconic songs from this, but talking about culture, it was like very fabricated, if we can say that. And it's very cool to talk about this with you guys because I never realized that I am Latino. I said this to you guys before. It just happened when I met Mauricio, like very recently. Like he asked me, "Do you think you are a Latino?" And I was like thinking, I never thought about this because here in Brazil we are so apart of the other countries in so many ways, like with politicians and the language is different. We talk
The
Portuguese,
language. Yeah.
yes, but I feel like nowadays we are getting closer because of the music and Brazilian artists making in other countries just now. But back then, I gotta talk to you a little bit about Sandy Jr. again. I always talk about them, but
Of
it's because we are
course.
taling about the 90s and
Of
they are
Yeah.
course.
Yeah. Yeah.
the biggest example in pop music here in Brazil. So they were kind of chosen to be uh, those artists in that moment, in the music, the Latin explosion. And that happened actually with Enrique Iglesias being involved because they recorded a song together. Enrique Iglesias released You're My Number One as a single in 2000 from the album
Mm.
Enrique. And here in Brazil, we had a different version that was with Sandy Jr. that I will show to you guys the single, here the promo. You're my
Okay.
number
Oh,
one,
wow.
Enrique and Sandy Jr.
This
And
is very rare.
yes, and this was
Yeah.
treated here in Brazil like the first step for Sandy Jr. for the international career. So the music video was like in the news and showing them singing with Enrique. Enrique came to Brazil to promote because they also released a special version of his album with the song here.
Mm.
Oh,
Very
okay,
beautiful.
okay.
We have Sandy Jr. here.
Sandy Junior look very, very kids like
Oh yeah,
her their faces like very, very, very
yes.
Yes.
kids like
They
Like
were
very
like
yeah.
teenagers.
Like
I think
teenagers,
Sandy was
yeah.
16 here in Junior 15. They were
Okay.
very young. And then they started to record the English album and Spanish album and French too. A lot of languages in 2001, and it was an insane year for them here in Brazil because you could see Sandy Jr. like every day on TV and stuff because they started 2001 singing in Rock in Rio, as I said before, on the same day with NSYNC 5 and Britney Spears. And they had a TV show here in Brazil, like a series like Friends, you know, something like this, but
Mm-hmm.
teenagers in the
Mm-hmm.
school every Monday. So, and from Monday, sorry, every Sunday. And from Monday to Saturday, you could see Sandy Jr. in a telenovela here in Brazil called
Mm,
Estrela Guia. Sandy was
yeah.
the the main girl in this telenovela. And if you change the channel, you will see them on MTV and the gossip channels. So they were everywhere, and they took the time. I don't know how to record the English album in US with people like Diane Warren. So it was
Mm-hmm.
very important to them. But the release of this album was kind of little by little. So in the US market, they didn't release the English version at first. It was only Spanish, a Spanish version of the album, which I have here. Wait a little. I have a lot of versions of this album here. Uh, I believe is this one, the American one. It's only
Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
only Spanish tracks because they had plans to come back to America and work the English versions. But this was released in Mexico, in Chile, Colombia, um, Portugal, and some countries in Europe. We have a European version, so England, and different track
Okay.
lists. So the cover is always the same, but the
The
track
same.
lists
Yeah.
are different.
Okay.
And people here in
Mm-hmm.
Brazil thinks that they didn't uh, make great with the international career, but the truth is that we didn't have internet like we have nowadays and social media, so it was hard to know what was going on. And now we have a documentary with Sandy Jr. released in 2019, and we know that they were kind of becoming famous in like especially Chile, and I believe in Mexico the song was playing too, El Amor no Fallará.
I don't really recall that one.
Okay, I know that in
I
Chile.
should listen to it. Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Mm.
In Chile, like we have now in internet, like scenes the people waiting in the airport and screaming, and they living this famous life, and they told that it kind of scared them because here in Brazil they were like the number one artist, and suddenly in other parts of the world they started to be recognized and having fans, and they drop it. They didn't continue with the international career because they wanted to be free in the rest of the world. And of course, it was like a lot of work because here in Brazil, everyone wanted them all the time. And in other countries, they had to like uh, present themselves like a new artist. So asking for
Mm.
opportunities and things like that. So it was different. So they were like 13 years of career here in Brazil. They wasn't uh, they don't want it to have all that work for something that maybe they didn't want at first place. So they drop it. They were plans to release in France. Like I have the French single here, released in 2003, like a lot of time later, but they dropped it. And Mal talking about
Okay.
Vanessa, but I'm not talking about this like this Latin explosion or crossover thing because she made English songs, yes, but so many years later, like the
Oh,
first
okay.
single was with Ja Rule, 2008, Fly, which I love.
Fly.
But Vanessa
Mm-hmm.
never tried international career. Like everything that happened for her in Mexico or US, like New York Times posted about her songs, Stuck on Repeat, was very organic. She never tried to make an international career, so she's not part of this.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I was about to tell you, Lucas, that Brazilian artists have always been present in the international market, not only in the US, because if we go way back, uh, when bossa nova began,
Yes.
bossa nova was a huge genre that started to become like really known outside,
Yes.
and some of the songs were sung in English in from bossa nova,
Yes.
especially by the amazing and the one that already passed away, Astrud Gilberto. she was the only one that could speak English. So she's the one that started singing those bossa nova songs in English, so they could achieve a wider audience. So it's great
Yes,
that
great. We
Brazilian artists have always been there.
Yes, we had Tom Jobim and Carmen
Mm-hmm.
Miranda was always representing Brazil. Even she was, I believe she wasn't born in Brazil. I believe it was Portugal. If I'm wrong, I'm going to cut this later. But she lived in Brazil. She represented Brazil. So you are totally right.
Yes,
I
and the
remember.
oh,
Go ahead,
I'm
Marin.
sorry, Mo. No, I
No, no,
was
no.
about
It's
to
okay.
tell you that João Gilberto's daughter, Bebel Gilberto,
Yeah.
she also sings in Portuguese and sings in English. So, but she's more into the more into lounge sound.
Yes.
Even though she's amazing, I love her. I saw her live once. She's amazing,
Yes.
and
Oh wow.
and she's very popular in New York.
Yes. Here in Brazil, we call this MPB, Música Popular Brasileira. It's not
Oh,
the
Okay,
okay.
pop music, but is our kind of popular music. So
okay,
she's in this kind of music. Yes.
mm, okay.
I remember a Janet Jackson interview when she mentioned that she was very inspired in Brazilian music. So it was very like interesting to know because as Mariel said, Brazilian music went at that moment to everywhere in the planet. So yeah, and with a very typical sound, not like a popular sound, not in the pop industry. Like for example, bossa nova is like a very typical sound from Brazil.
Yes.
So it's
It,
very interesting to know that other kind of artists, for example, Janet Jackson, that is a pop R&B, she was very influenced by this
yes.
music.
Emma Bunton from the Spice Girls too. She made a
Yeah,
record, a whole record, inspired in bossa nova, the Free Me album. So it's very
Oh
cool
yeah,
to
it's
know that.
amazing.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
Okay.
Uh,
Okay, so now it's time to jump all the way to Mexico, from Brazil to Mexico.
yes.
And, well, many of you know that Mexican artists have always been present because we are a neighboring country to the US. So we have had huge Hollywood stars out there. But when it comes to music, there have also been very huge stars out there. And I'm really proud to say that that I come from a country that is really like wide in cultural and stuff, and that they are really proud of their culture as I am. So and that they don't that they are not ashamed to show that they're Mexican. So that's something that I really appreciate. And I could talk about many artists from back in the day, but now that we're focusing on artists from the 90s and 2000s, um, I'm gonna start talking about Thalia and Paulina Rubio. Those two met in the 80s. They were part of this music pop group called Timbiriche, which was like an S Club 7 from Mexico, if you can call it like that. They met, they worked together, they fight a lot. They fought a lot because both Talia wanted to have more like being the first in the group, and Paulina wanted the same, so they were always fighting.
They
And
were like
when they
rivals.
when they finally split, Talia decided to go solo, and she recorded her first album in 1990. And a few months later, Paulina released her debut album too. So if Talia released an album, Paulina did the same thing. So they were always, like competing, and also as actresses, because Talia is known as a huge actress for being in part of huge and worldwide known telenovelas. Paulina was also an actress and she wasn't bad, but she didn't have the same success as Talia. So
Yeah.
we were always saying like, oh, these two are always like competing. They were like the Britney and the Christina to us back in
Yes.
the day. And they both released Spanish albums all through the 90s. And it was until 2002 that both Talia and Paulina decided to record English albums. Talia had the chance to do it even better because she was married. She's still married to the one and only Tomi Motola. So she was like, okay, I'm known for my telenovelas, I'm known for my songs, but I want to be known for also singing in English. So she released her self-titled album Thalia in 2002, which entered the Billboard Hot 100, 200 at number 11. So she did really well. She did really well. And at the same time, Paulina released her album Border Girl by Universal Records. And this album did enter the Billboard 200. Her song Don't Say Goodbye picked at number 41. And
Oh,
I think it was The One You Love a little higher, like 55, something like that. And Casanova failed to chart, while Thalia's song also entered the Hot 100.
yeah.
So it was really interesting to see them competing again to gain the US market. So yeah, it was like seeing them from all that we've seen before from the 90s now coming into an international mode.
Yeah.
So Paulina released Border Girl, which also included songs from her previous album. This is the previous album from Border Girl. It's called Paulina. This album is one of my favorites, by the way. And she decided to record some of the songs from this album in this album, but in English. And so did the same. Thalia did the same with her 2001 album. She re-recorded some of her songs in English for her 2002 album. And another artist that has tried to make it in the US market was Faye. I don't know if you guys have heard of Faye,
Yeah.
but I mean
Of
now you
course.
obviously have, yes,
Yeah.
because
I love that album, by the way.
she was huge here in Latin America. So
Yeah.
interesting. She decided to go into a different direction from her previous 3 albums that were like totally bubblegum, and said, okay, I want to change a little bit and I want to go into a more electronic, more darker vibes. And so she recorded her album Vertigo, which is a double CD. One CD is in Spanish and the other CD is in English. And all the songs are the same, in Spanish and English. And it was one of the highest, how you call it? When one of the most expensive records ever recorded
Ooh.
by a
In
Mexican
Mexico.
artist.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yes. So she
Yeah.
was huge. She was having a huge deal with her Sony Music. She recorded her songs in Los Angeles and in London, so she was out there. But unfortunately, the album didn't enter the Billboard 200, and neither one of her songs,
oh,
which was crazy because her previous albums did chart in the Billboard 200. So, and they were Spanish albums. So it's kind of crazy. She only released one official single from this album called "Sé lo que vendrá," which was in English was "The Other Side." Is the
Yeah.
only video we have from that era. She later decided to release other singles, but more like promotional singles. So they
okay.
didn't enter the charts, and so Sony Music decided to drop her because she wasn't doing like the same she wasn't achieving the same success she had as when she was a bubblegum singer,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is crazy because this is a very well produced album, and Faye
And very
co-wrote all the
personal.
songs. It's a very personal album. Faye
Yeah.
co-wrote all the songs. She worked with great producers, but she didn't make it, so it's a shame. And I should also talk about Belinda, but I don't have any material by Belinda. But you guys know I'm not a huge fan. But I know she did recorded some songs in English, and she did a little bit better because Belinda is more known in the US market for her songs. I think, Lucas, you can help me here because I can't really remember the name of her songs. I Wanna Be Free? Is that one?
She released "Be Free" in English,
Yes.
But I don't know if
Hmm.
it was released in the U.S. market or the Latin market in the U.S. But after You Are Right, she did a little bit better because she was part of the Chica Girls 2, the movie from Disney
Hmm.
Channel,
Hmm.
and she had the song Why Wait, and then she released English versions of the songs in the second album, like If We Were, which is the English version of Ni Freud Ni Tu Mama. So yeah, she
Okay.
did a little bit good. Yeah.
Okay, so thank you for helping me out here because I'm not a fan of
Okay.
Belinda. So, so yeah, those four are the ones that I recall right now that have been like our biggest singers from Mexico from that era that had, like their time to shine in the US. Thalia is still one of our biggest artists out there, and even though she has recorded some of her songs in English, all her albums are in Spanish, but she's still doing great in the charts as a Spanish speaking singer,
Yes.
and so does Paulina. So those two are like our big reference. And I could mention you other Mexican singers that even though they didn't sing in English, they have been really well known out there, like Luis Miguel, Alejandro Fernandez. I mean, they are completely selling
It,
arenas in the US because they are really popular out there. So and they don't sing in English. So
Yeah.
that's something that we really should appreciate, that our languages, our native languages, our Spanish is being recognized out there. So it's great. And well, that's
Yes.
about Mexico. And now it's your turn to shine with Colombia and the
Before that,
amazing
I have a
Shakira.
question. I have a question for you, Mariel.
Yes,
Uh, Here in
let me know.
Brazil, I Want You by Thalia was a huge hit in the radio and TV, was everywhere. In Mexico, Mexican people were listening to the English tracks of Thalia, or Me Pone Sexy, the Spanish version, was like more successful.
I think the Spanish version was a little bit more successful. We were like really, like used to listen to Talia singing in Spanish. So she suddenly jumping into singing in English was like a little bit weird for us. She was successful. I can't say no because her songs
Yeah,
in English were played on the radio. But I think that her Spanish songs will always be more powerful to us because
yeah,
of our language. It's our language. So yeah.
yeah. In the article that I found in LA Times 2004, they were talking about Paulina Rubio like something that wasn't a good example of the Latin explosion, because the English album, the sales for this were lower than the Spanish. So at the end of the
Mm-hmm.
day, was better for her to continue to sing in Spanish. And also they say that
Yes.
Julio Iglesias never fully recovered his Latin audience after he started to sing in English and be like more American image. So there's two sides in this story, always.
Yeah, there's two sides, and even though that happened, Julio Iglesias is one of the biggest selling artists of the world. So
Yeah,
it's crazy.
it's
So yeah,
crazy.
I know.
So, sorry, Mao. Is your
Yeah. So now, sorry, Mao. Now
no, no,
it's your
no,
turn.
no. No, it's okay because I want to make a comment about it, about Faye, because in the last days I've been like connecting to this album, to the Vertigo album, and it's an amazing album. I know maybe Mariel is more fan than Lucas of Faye, and I think this album deserved all the success because she was very risky at the time. She took the risk to make a different album, not in the pop vibe, mostly in the EDM and electronic vibe. So it was very brave by her to do that because she wasn't
Yes.
she was not going behind the sure thing.
yeah,
She was like taking a rest, and I think it's an amazing album. I love the song Vertigo, that is the name of the city. It's a very empowering song, and it's like
Yes.
taking risk and taking it's about taking risk, and it's about to jump. Like if you think that you want to do something, just like do it without fear or with fear, but do it. So I wanted to make that comment because I love that album, and it's an album that
Yes.
grew up in me, inside me. I have a good friend, a very good friend that I sent a big hug. That is Marlon Ramos from Barranquilla, and he's a huge fan of Faye. So because of him, I had the opportunity to get into the Faye's music, and because of that, I right now I feel connected to that album. It's an amazing album.
Yes, it's good that you mentioned that because her previous three albums were like super bubblegum. All of her songs were like
Yeah,
really cheesy. Like I love my boyfriend and I'm like really
yeah,
cute and stuff. And so all of a sudden after a 3 year hiatus, she decided to release this album and as a total different thing that from what we know about
yeah,
Faye.
yeah.
So if you kind of wondering what kind of album this is, you can probably relate it to Kylie Minogue's
To Kylie
Impossible
Minogue,
Princess.
totally. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yes. So it's
Totally
that
agree.
kind of album. It's that kind of album that is a little darker and it has like really, personal vibes and more electronics
Yeah,
vibes out there. But yeah, if you're wondering what kind of album this is, yes, it's like Kylie's Impossible
and it
Princess.
is
Yes.
2003,
Totally.
right? 2003.
I think it's
No, this is
2002.
2002.
Oh,
2002.
2002. Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
You,
Okay.
Luquitas, I think you have to give this album a chance because it's very
I
good.
think I already did. I kind of remember a little bit when Marielle mentioned Kylie because I try to listen a lot of things of this girl, but I will try again because now I'm curious. I want
Yeah.
to remember. Yes.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah. So,
So
well,
now,
first of all, okay. So, first of all, happy Pride Month, everybody. I have the rainbow behind me. So, I want to celebrate this with you, and happy Pride Month for everybody. So, well, I think I have a huge responsibility on my shoulders because I will talk about this album that is the most successful crossover in history of Latin artists. Of course, as Lucas mentioned, Ricky and Enrique were so popular, of course, Thalia, but Shakira just kill it at that time. She was very successful. So for me, it's very important to mention that because that was the first time a Colombian girl, a Colombian artist, did this kind of explosion. So, well, you know the story. I don't, maybe I don't want to mention that everybody knows that maybe the songs, of course, she was very successful. I want to mention that she was very insecure to do that because at that time she barely speaks in English. For her was very difficult to speak in English. So she was working very hard, and there is an important person that was a very important part of this project and was Gloria Stefan. And Gloria Stefan had that, as Lucas mentioned, Gloria Stefan had this opportunity in the 80s to make like not a crossover, but to be part of the U.S. market at that time, be part of the U.S. In the music industry at that time. So for Shakira was so difficult because she was like the Colombian girl singing like rock songs and stuff. And I, you guys know that Shakira's lyrics are very like poetry, are very like analogies and stuff like that in her two first records, in the previous records, like in Pies Descalzos and Donde Están los Ladrones. And for her was very difficult to conserve this kind of lyrics that sound very poetry and at the same time do it in English. And she mentioned that she all the time she was with her English dictionary at hand and a synonyms book at hand to try to write lyrics. And this is very like I think it's Sometimes I hate Shakira, sometimes I love Shakira, but I have to say this time I love that woman in that moment in time because it was very important for people here in Colombia to have an artist singing in English. She was huge. Whenever, wherever, charted at number six in the Billboard Hot 100 was amazing. And I think the the most important thing about it, or I think the result, the successful thing about it, it was because she was very authentic. Even when she was singing in English, even she was like blonde or very sexy and different image. She was very true to herself because she was singing this kind of music that was so her, like mixing tango, mixing Andean music. She was very authentic, and I think that was the secret of the success of that album.
Mm.
So, Servicio de Lavandería, laundry service, you know the name. The first single was Whenever Wherever. Then we have Underneath Your Clothes. I think Mariel likes that album. I know that Mariel is not a huge fan of Shakira, but I think she likes this song.
Yes, I have heard most of the songs from that album, and I gotta say, it's one of her bests. So yes, definitely. Underneath Your Clothes is a beautiful
Yeah,
song.
I know. I know, of course, Luquitas is fan of Shakira, so I'm sure that he loved that song too.
Yes, a lot, and was huge hit here in Brazil, and I love to listen that on the radio back then. Yes.
Yeah, and at the beginning of the video, if you remember, there is a reporter that is talking in English to her, and she was answering in Spanish. And the message of this part of the video was that because at that time she was very criticized to sing in English. Like she was a sell out because she was singing in English. She's like denying her Colombian culture and stuff like that. And I think she wanted to be bigger and she wanted to expand her product. So that was the reason, and she was very successful. And she has all my admiration because she did it great at that time and did this was her message at that time. So I'm singing in English, but not for this reason I'm less
Yeah.
Colombian or I'm less Latina. So and there is like a parallel story, and this parallel story is about Juanes. At that time Juanes had a campaign called Se habla en español, and some people say, this is not my words, guys. Some people say that this campaign was against Shakira because for some people, Shakira was singing in English because she wanted to be someone that she was not at that time. And for Juanes, it was like, I decide not to sing in English and sing in Spanish because I want to go everywhere in the world singing in Spanish. And I remember a commercial that I saw today, a commercial from that time that was around the world, like in Asia and Europe, singing the Juanes song, like with the accent. For example, Chinese people singing this song that was Dame, 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 lame lo que quiero. I don't know if you remember. Maybe Mariel, of course. I don't know if Lucas remember that.
No.
But yeah, that campaign was huge at that time because he wanted to send that message to people. I can be successful and I can be successful singing in Spanish. I don't need to sing in English to be successful. So it was great too. I admire Juanes so much, of course. And as I told you, there are people that think that was against Shakira, and it was like a complot between Juanes and his manager at that time, Fernan Martinez, to try to I can't find the word in English, desacreditar a Shakira, but I don't know if it's true or not. I don't think it was like that. I think it's was because of the message. And we have then Despacito explosion. That was I think the Se Habla en Español campaign was the beginning of that. I think that because Juanes was very successful only singing in English, not only only singing in Spanish, not only in the US, around the world. He was very famous, of course, in some countries more than the others, but he was very very
Yeah.
successful. And Shakira and Juanes were like our flag to the world, like our representation of Colombian people. So that was the story, and I feel very very proud of Shakira at that time. She was at the level of people like Britney Spears, like Christina Aguilera, and it was like impossible to think at that time because we here in Colombia never had an artist like that. For example, as you mentioned, Mariel, in Mexico, you have a lot of successful artists, and of course in Brazil in different levels. But here in Colombia, we didn't have that. We didn't have like a very successful artist until Shakira released her records and get in the scene music industry. So that was the story about Shakira. It's very amazing and it's very exciting for me to talk about it because I lived this era with all this passion because I was very excited when the whenever wherever that here was Suerte was like in rotation in MTV and everywhere. I remember my dad at the time. He was like, "Oh, Shakira is like Madonna," at that time. So I was like, not like Madonna, but maybe in the way of being like
Yeah.
Madonna. So, well, right now Shakira is like a huge diva, like in the level of Madonna or J-Lo or people like that.
And
So
breaking
so yeah,
records,
it
singing in Spanish now for
and in
for
Spanish
the
now,
world.
yes,
So
yes, look at that.
that's good.
Yeah, yeah. And it's amazing and it's amazing and she's a total like a total emporium. I don't know how to say that total like an iconic symbol.
Yes,
So yeah, for Colombian people it's
she's the
amazing. Of course, not but
Latin
nobody.
woman of the year for Billboard. So
Yeah, yeah,
she's
yeah,
doing.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, yeah, yeah. So yeah, that's all about Shakira. How a girl that didn't speak a word in English become of one of the most successful crossovers at that time.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
You never know. You never know what can happen in this life. I mean, if you're successful, if you're talented, you never know where you're gonna get because if you have the talent, if you have the courage to do it, then you will do it, and she definitely did. So, which is great
Yeah,
because if
Yeah,
she only
yeah,
spoke Spanish back in the day and she decided to jump into a different language, it's like really interesting and really, really, we should be proud of that
yeah,
from
we are
Latin
for
yeah,
sure.
artists.
totally.
And
As a
every time she
Latin,
came to
yeah,
Brazil, even before that, she was always trying to speak her best Portuguese, which was great.
Portuguese,
So
yeah,
she's that person. She wants to do
yeah,
everything with the heart and everything well. So she did it. So we are very proud of Shakira.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
And I
totally.
was I was going to tell about Thalia that Thalia is also one of those singers that didn't speak any Portuguese and she knew that she was having a lot of success in Brazil because of her telenovelas and her
Yeah,
music that she decided to record some songs in Portuguese. So she also did that transition to make the Brazilian fans
yeah,
happy, as well as she did in the Philippines.
yeah.
She recorded a whole album in Tagalog, which is
Yeah,
crazy because it's a very difficult
Wow,
language,
crazy.
really?
and
Actually, here
so that's something that we should really
appreciate.
applaud
Yeah,
to these artists that they yes
all of them
they
did
are
it
trying
for
to
Brazil.
make it.
Yeah, Enrique Iglesias, Ricky Martin recorded in Portuguese too before they recorded in English. So
RBD did that too.
And they did.
Yeah.
But let me tell you, here in Brazil, we never liked the Portuguese versions of RBD.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Why?
Everyone loved the Spanish tracks. It was like, you guys, you don't have to do this in Portuguese. No, we love the Spanish tracks. But the radio were
Oh,
playing like the first single here was Fique em Silêncio, solo quédate em Silêncio.
Fique en silencio.
5 minutos. So
Sí.
everyone knows this
Todos.
one. But
Yes.
after that, the Spanish tracks were on the radio. We never care about the Portuguese.
Yeah, it happens. I don't know about Talia's versions in English. I think that she in English, I'm sorry, in Portuguese. I think that she recorded some of her songs from her album Amor a la Mexicana,
Yeah,
Noites Sem Lua.
yeah,
That's one of the ones I recall right now. I don't know if those songs were successful or if she was more successful with her Spanish
yes. With
songs.
Spanish too. I believe the only one who I remember people singing the Portuguese version was Enrique. Uh,
Mm,
the songs in Portuguese were kind of popular, but Thalia, all those girls, all those artists were more uh, huge in Spanish here.
I have a question about it, Lucas. For example, if people like, for example, Thalia or Shakira record a song in Portuguese, uh, Brazilian radio stations play that song
Uh,
in
like it
Portuguese?
happened with Sunny Junior that I mentioned before to you guys. We had two different of stations here in Brazil. We had the pop and the popular. It was different. The popular
Yeah.
stations we had samba, pagode, sertanejo, which was like regional music of here. So those radios played the Portuguese version. Even when Sandy Jr. released Love Never Fails, those radios here in Brazil were playing O Amor Nos Guiará, the Portuguese version. And the other
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
stations, the pop stations that were playing international hits, they played Spanish or English and not the Portuguese versions.
Okay, okay. So these radio stations, the popular, from the country, only play singers from Brazil, right?
Singers from Brazil or tracks that were made for them. It's, like Pero Me Acuerdo
Okay.
de Ti by Christina Aguilera were played in the popular stations, not the pop. So it's kind of confusing, you know?
Oh,
It's kind of confusing.
oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, the RBD tracks were the Portuguese versions in the popular radio, and the Spanish and English in the pop radio. So it is different markets here, you know. The popular radio is that one
Ah,
that
okay.
you are like in a shoe store in the middle of São Paulo and a lot of people and they're playing. And
okay.
the pop
Okay.
was like, oh, I'm young, I'm cool, and I'm listening to this and watching MTV, you know?
Okay, okay, okay. I get it
Okay,
now.
okay. Great. So I think now it's time for us to jump into a little game that Mau has
Yes,
prepared for us.
I'm
So
curious about
bring
that.
it on, darling. Yes.
Okay, okay, guys. Okay, I have two questions, and I don't know how to do it, but I think you have like to raise your hand or something like that if you know the answer, and I have to be very like to notice what who is the first that raising the hand. So the first question is about, of course, of this topic that we are talking about it. And the first question is, who of these Spanish ladies recorded a crossover album called Bad Girls? A. Mónica Naranjo. B. Marta Sánchez. C. Rosario. Mariel?
Hold on. Yes. It was Mónica Naranjo.
Oh, great. Right.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yes, she's huge here in Mexico, so that's why I know that because
Oh,
she did that song, she did that album called Chicas Malas, which means bad girls.
yeah,
So yeah, I know
yeah,
that.
yeah,
I
yeah,
knew that
yeah.
one. Yes,
Oh,
I knew
okay,
that one.
okay. I'm seeing Lucas' face as he's like, I don't have any idea of that.
Yeah, I have no idea who is this girl.
Well, yeah, I will
Okay,
send you
and
some songs
Thank you. Thank you
sometime.
so much.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I want to know about it, Mauriel. In that album there is a version of "Live for You" by Rachel Lampa.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question, Mau?
Of course, it's for you, Mariel, because you know the album. In this album there is a version by Mónica Naranjo of "Live for You" by Rachel Lampa.
Oh, Rachel Lampa. Live for you, baby.
I didn't know. I didn't
Ah,
know. I
really?
I, I didn't know.
Okay, it's for you to know. In this album, in the
Okay.
Bad Girls album, there is a cover of, well, Mónica Naranjo singing "Live for You" by Rachel
That's
Lampa.
cool.
I didn't know. I don't know all of Monica's songs because she has a huge discography, and I'm more familiar with her work from the 90s, but I will definitely check
Okay,
that out
okay.
because I love
Yeah,
Rachel,
yeah,
so yes.
yeah. Yeah, of course, of course. My next question was about it, but what version you prefer. So, well, you have to check it out because you don't know it, but
Oh,
it's okay.
okay. Okay, okay.
The
Great.
the next one is very easy, and you mentioned this in the episode today. Who of these Mexican girls was part of the Cheetah Girls cast? Belinda, Dulce Maria, or Maria Jose?
Belinda.
It was so easy. Yeah, it was so
Yes.
easy.
And I
Yeah,
love
yeah,
her
yeah,
song in
yeah,
the
yeah.
movie. I love it.
I think that it's amazing that you mentioned Belinda because maybe she was not part of this Latin explosion of this
Yeah.
time, but she recorded some songs in English, so she was like a part, maybe later, but she was
Yes.
part. Okay, this is not a question. This is you say what you prefer. So it goes first with you, Mariel. Talia,
Okay.
I Want You versus Paulina, Don't Say Goodbye.
Don't say goodbye.
Why?
I think it has a more pop vibe, the kind of pop vibe that I love, because I Want You by Thalia is more like an R&B track. I love it. I can say I don't, but I think I can find myself more related to Paulina's style from that music, from that song. So yes, that's why.
Okay, what about you,
I
Luquitas?
Want to by Thalia. Yes. I do
Yeah.
like Paulina Don't Say Goodbye song. I think it's very sexy and dancey, and but I was crazy about Thalia crossover, especially because she was doing more hip hop thing. Because I used to love when pop singers were doing songs with rappers back then, and I Want to was like huge hit here in Brazil, and I loved the whole album. And Paulina, I remember, I don't know, I wasn't so attracted by her in the music video and things like this. For me, that was 12. Looking at her, it was like she was really older, you know.
Okay, okay,
But
okay, okay. Another kind
yeah,
of
but I
vibe.
love it the song too, Batalia for sure.
Okay, okay, okay. Next question. Baby, I'm in Love by Thalia versus Whenever, Wherever by Shakira. Mariel?
Um, I'm gonna go with yes, Shakira.
Oh, really? I want to know why.
Yes. Yes, even though I love Thalia, don't get me wrong, I think Shakira's song was more popular and I think I listened to it more. So that's why and I love listening to both versions of whatever you call it.
Whatever,
And
whatever, whatever.
Whatever it is.
whatever, and
Right.
suerte. So I think I was more into Shakira's music back in the day than Thalia's, so that's why.
Oh, okay, okay. What about you, Luquitas? I think
Yeah.
is the
No,
same.
it's not. I prefer Baby I'm Love. Yes.
Oh, I want to know why.
I do love Shakira,
This is a
of
huge
course.
surprise.
Talking about numbers, whatever, whatever is iconic song, but there's something special about 2003 for me. I can't explain. And Baby I'm in Love was single in 2003, and is uh the most pop rock thing that Talia made. I believe. So it's very similar of other things that I love from that year, and it was not like I want to hear that was on the radio all the time. It was on the radio, but only a few times. So I remember to be crazy to listen to the song and wait to record it on the tape. So I don't know. I feel more connected to the song.
Okay, okay, okay. That was a surprise because I was sure that you were going to select Shakira.
Yes, and I still listen to "Baby I'm in Love" a lot now. Whenever, whatever, not
Okay,
that much.
okay, okay, okay. Next versus Living La Vida Loca by Ricky Martin versus Reading Divine by Enrique Iglesias. Mariel?
Oh, Ricky Martin for sure.
Okay, why?
Yes. Because I listen to Ricky Martin more than I listen to Enrique. I think I didn't like Enrique at first. It He
Oh,
grew on me when he released his song I Like It,
oh,
like
Okay.
way later.
Oh, way,
So
way later, yeah.
yes, so I wasn't so much into Enrique's music, but right now I really like him. But to be more like like sincere, I would say Ricky because of the time he's the one I listen to. So yeah, Ricky.
Okay, perfect. For you, Luquitas?
well, I listen to Enrique a lot more than Ricky Martin, but between those songs, "Living La Vida Loca" is better for me. "Rhythm Divine," I don't feel like it's
Oh,
the
okay.
strongest Enrique single, but "Living La Vida Loca" is like
No,
very good song. So
I think Enrique's song Escape is definitely one of his best.
yes, it's very pop. You are
Oh,
totally
okay, okay, okay,
yes.
okay. Okay, okay. Okay, in general, for you, Mariel, English Thalia's album, Border Girl, or Laundry Service by Shakira?
Uh, Border Girl would be first, then Thalia,
Yeah,
and then Shakira.
Shakira.
That's
Okay, okay,
yes,
okay, okay. That
yes,
makes sense. Of course.
yes.
And what about you, Lucas?
Uh, Thalia number one, Laundry Service number two, and the Paulina Rubio album number three. Because I only like a few songs. I tried recently again, and I fell in love with a few songs because of Mauricio asked me to listen again, and
Yeah.
I totally like it. But is this Thalia is my favorite between the three?
Okay. Now that you mention, actually, Paulina is coming to Colombia next
Oh,
next
that's
month.
cool.
So maybe I'm planning to
Yeah.
go because
Yes.
yeah, maybe I'm not a huge fan of Paulina, but of course I want to be part of
Yes, you
this. I
should.
want to be the witness of
That's
the concert.
nice.
Of course, it's a huge event, and it's
I,
not
I have
so
never seen
expensive.
her
So
live, which is
oh,
crazy.
really?
Uh,
Why?
No,
Why?
and neither Thalia and only Faye is the only one I've seen live twice. But
Oh, okay, okay,
no,
okay,
no.
okay.
I'm hoping that Thalia is coming soon because she released a new
yeah,
album, Thalia's
Yeah.
mixtape. So I'm really
yeah.
hoping she does a tour. but I'm not really sure. So if she does, I
It
will finally
Me
go.
too, because she never
okay,
came
okay,
back to
okay,
Brazil.
okay.
It's been a lot of years that Thalia uh, didn't come back.
I think it's because Thalia is not making a lot of
Yeah,
concerts
and I think she lives
right
in
now.
US,
Yeah,
not Mexico.
in
She lives
US.
in New
Yeah.
Yeah,
York. She lives in New York, and she's I think her last tour was in 2015, probably,
yeah,
when she recorded that song with Maluma for the Latina album. So I think it was 2015,
Yeah.
2016. Um, yeah, so that's the one I recall that she did last, but she hasn't come back. So we hope she
Yeah.
does because I really want to see her
yeah,
live.
yeah. Of course, of course. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if Thalia ever come to Colombia to a concert. I don't remember that. I remember Paulina coming, but I don't remember
Okay.
Thalia coming to Colombia. Maybe with Timbiriche a long, long time ago, of course, but not in her solo career. Yeah. Well, guys, that was my game. I hope you enjoy it so
Yes.
much. And
No, now it's your turn, Mao. It's your turn, Mao, to tell us what of those
Yeah,
songs you
you're right.
prefer and how would you rank those albums. Now it's your turn.
okay, okay, perfect. Well, Thalia Want You versus Paulina Don't Say Goodbye is very like difficult to choose because audience know that I am a R&B junkie. I love R&B music, but I think Don't Say Goodbye. I feel connected to that song so much because I use that song to run in the mornings, and this song has an amazing vibe. So I think today I choose Don't Say Goodbye by Paulina, even though, of course, I love Thalia's I Want You. Whatever versus Baby I'm in Love, I think whatever, of course, here was huge, 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 of course. And I remember me and my siblings like dancing, and at the end of the video, we were in the bed and we were like jumping in the bed like Shakira. It was very fun, yeah. Living La Vida Loca versus Reading Divine. I think Living La Vida Loca was very played at that time, was everywhere, so it's not a song that I love so much, so I think I prefer Reading Divine.
Okay.
Even though I'm not a huge Enrique fan, but I think I'm more connected to the song. And in the three albums, I think Laundry Service, Thalia's, and Border Girl, because Thalia Thalia's album was one of these albums that I played a lot at that time. So I know I love songs that were not singles like
Yes.
Misbehaving or What's It Gonna Be Boy. I love that song so much. So I love and Shakira in the first place because it's Shakira and this was huge. And I know every single lyrics from that album. So and Border Girl by Paulina is amazing too for me. But I consider this album is very like they thought at that time Paulina uh Paulina was going to be like huge because these songs in Spanish were hits, but it was not like that. So it's a shame because it's amazing. They are amazing songs. Like I love that Paulina's album, for example, that you mentioned, Marian, because it's full of hits. Like yeah, it's amazing album. I love that. I remember a girl that was my friend in the high school had that album, and we were all the time at that time playing that album so much and singing the lyrics and singing the songs. I love that album. I think I prefer the Paulina's album instead of Border Girl, even though I of course I love Border Girl.
Yes. Yeah, I am really fond of this album. This is the album I knew by Paulina first. Before I knew she
Oh,
recorded some songs, other albums in the 90s, but this is the one I loved her first. the most, and she worked with great songwriters like Juan Gabriel and Armando Manzanero, who have already passed away, but they're
Yeah,
great songwriters. So I'm really fond of this album. So
yeah, it's a
okay,
great album.
yes, it is. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this episode. I had a lot of fun talking about those artists that made it big outside from our respective countries. We are really proud of our cultures and those singers and well, yeah, acts that have made it big outside. So yeah,
Go
go
Latino.
Latinos. Yes.
Yeah.
Let us know in the comments what are your favorite Latino singers out there. What songs are your favorites? And don't forget to give us a big thumbs up, subscribe to this channel, visit and like our Instagram account, Ready Set Pop Pod. And well, anything else you guys want to add, Mao?
Well, thank you so much, Guy, for giving me the opportunity to have this subject because was my selection for
Yeah.
this week. So I enjoyed so much to talk with you. You know it. Today was not a great day in my job, but you made it like the end of the day was great because I had the opportunity to talk with you, and it's amazing, and it's a full of hugs and loves, and it's amazing to talk with you. So it's as I mentioned to Luquitas, it's I think this is a play full of it's a safe place for with you,
Full,
full
yeah.
of love. So. Thank you guys. Thank you for the audience. I received like an idea of a subject for an episode. So, for the audience, be very sure that we take in consideration your
Yeah.
opinions and your suggestions, of course. Of course. So don't forget to subscribe and don't forget to like this video.
Lucas,
And
do
what
you have
about you,
anything else to
Luquitas?
add?
I just want to say thank you. It was very fun. I believe we got to make another episode to talk about the artists who sing it in Spanish because there's a lot of examples that we can have. A lot of Spanish language artists. And I want to say thank you to everyone who's commenting and giving us feedback and being part of this is because of you too that we are doing this because we love to talk about pop music. So thank you so much and can't wait for the next episode.
See you
Yay!
next week,
Thank you so much.
guys.
Thank you so much, everybody. And don't forget to see us next week. Love
Bye
you.
bye. Ciao.
Bye.
Yay!